A very good morning to you. Welcome along. Got a great show for you lined up today. Going to talk about Spygate, Marcelo Bielsa. We'll go to South America to Tim Vickery to get his thoughts on it. And Keith Wood is going to give us his thoughts on the Ireland squad for the first two games of the Six Nations. So it's not the entire squad for the entire thing. And if you've missed out on this, then, life isn't a complete disaster. But it's a bit of a kick in the teeth for some of the players. And it's also a massive boost for others. We'll get through that in just a little while. Owen is here this morning. How are you?
I'm very well. How are you?
I insulted Owen this morning by asking him if he got the cultural frame of reference for the back page of The Sun, which has an international man of mystery with the face of Marcelo Bielsa on it.
It was deeply insulting that I was asked, do you understand what Austin Powers is?
And
it's
then,
actually the most insulting thing anybody's ever said to me.
And then it turns out that it wasn't a completely ridiculous question. What year was the first Austin Powers movie?
1997.
What age were you?
3.
Right, so there you go. It turns out...
you know me, I'm a man before my time, Ger.
You were born old, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, born old, born with a receding hairline.
All right, is that a touchy thing for you?
Well, no, it was a joke.
All right.
Or can he be born with a receding hairline?
I mean, you'd be pretty unfortunate, but I guess I see it now that you've pointed out.
Yeah, well, born with that. And what were we talking about? Austin Powers?
We're keeping a close eye on the golf this morning. Shane Lowry was the leader in the clubhouse after the first round with a stunning 10 under par 62. Ian Poulter has joined him at the top of the leaderboard, also on 10 under par. He's 4 under through 17 of his round today. Lee Westwood on 9 under, Scott Jemison on 9 under, and then there's a bunch of them on 8 under, and a few good players still to go out. So Lowry hasn't teed off yet. He'll be teeing off around about 25 past 12 our time. Is that right? Not gone out for another 4 or 5 hours? That'd be pretty good.
I think you got that wrong. I think he's teeing off. Shane Lowry, I think, is teeing off in the next hour.
All right, so maybe that's local time. That must be local time, yeah. Okay. That would make sense that they put it in local time as opposed to in the time which you're viewing it, which, they do on lots of other sites.
It's been a good start for you this morning, hasn't it?
Yeah, I thought it was great. We've found your Achilles heel.
Not really.
Yeah, totally.
We found my strength, really.
Right, let's bring you this. So, Spygate has led to, a lot of hand-wringing. Frank Lampard's definitely not going to talk about it, but he wants to make sure that the authorities are dealing with it. He's definitely not going to use it as an excuse for the fact that his team were beaten and that it was a distraction in the build-up to the game, because that was not what happened. Definitely was not a distraction, but he's not going to talk about it anymore. He's going to stop answering questions about it any time now. He's going to stop talking about Marcelo Bielsa. It turns out that spying has been endemic in the game for years, and that lid was lifted gloriously by Kevin Kilbane last night. Have a look.
Over the years, though, as well, I've heard it at various football clubs, and I believe it to be true, where kit men have been outside doors, kit rooms that are adjacent to or parallel with changing rooms, away team dressing rooms, that there's very little wall between them, or a very, very thin wall between them, where the kit man goes into the room, listens to what the opposition's manager's saying pre-match and when they arrive at the ground. Basically, just little things. This is common practice across football, and if I was a manager of an opposition when it was happening to me, of course, rightly, you'd be annoyed and you'd want to go and kill the fellas when they're doing it. But this is common practice across the game. This has gone on for years.
But what you're actually annoyed at is being found out.
That's what it is.
You're not annoyed at the other person for doing it. You're annoyed that you were allowed to be got.
But surely in this day and age, where you can get tiny little recording devices, it would be easy to put one in an opposition dressing room and listen word for word to what they've said.
Genuinely, I'm sure it's been done. I mean,
I wouldn't recommend it, obviously.
It is, but it was things like that. And it's more the fact is getting found out where it becomes the big story. I think it was Keith. Keith was talking Friday, wasn't he, on Sky? Keith was outraged by it. Like, Keith was so strong on it. I was like, Keith, fair enough. That's his opinion on it, but What realistically would Bielsa have learned from his guy watching Derby training? Unless they're working on some special free kicks and corners, unless they're working on something really intricate tactically, which is unlikely.
Yeah, and you were saying you'd forgotten about Kitman hiding in the laundry basket. Jose Mourinho, he was banned from being on the touchline, and so therefore banned from being in the stadium, but they smuggled him in. Was it a Champions League game?
Champions League game, I think. Was that the Bernabeu? I can't quite remember, but he was smuggled in and then out of the stadium into a hotel nearby after delivering a rousing pre-match speech, no doubt.
Just like Marilyn Monroe popping out of the birthday cake for JFK.
Well, exactly, and then he sang happy birthday to someone or something like that, whatever happens next. It is a very good point there that there are far better technology at the moment than an actual human being being there, whatever, listening in via a glass into a dressing room or whatever it may be. I wonder, are dressing rooms bugged, for example? It seems like a pretty sensible thing to do.
It was the first thing Nathan thought of, so like...
If you would stand outside a dressing room with a glass, you would bug a dressing room.
He's not the only evil genius in football, Nathan. Yeah, look, I mean, did Bielsa kill it yesterday? Is that it? It's over?
Well, it's hard to tell. He said that he wanted to kill us yesterday in terms of the real press conferences tomorrow for the weekend, but let's get this one out of the way and actually lay all the cards on the table as to what actually happened. Part of me hopes that Bielsa was completely lying yesterday. That
made up.
He just made up everything, and that we've now started to think of Marcelo Bielsa as an absolute genius rather than someone who kind of made a blatant error. If he is putting in this much effort into the intricacies of video analysis, surely he could do a little bit better in terms of planning his spies. It seemed like a fairly spottable thing, as in there was some suggestion that the spy in question had come along in some sort of camouflage outfit as well as pliers.
How did they get caught?
I'm not quite sure, actually.
So how did this, yeah.
Like, if you're getting caught with a spy, it's probably not a good enough spy. And I think you've got to take a little bit of blame for that. If you're that much of a meticulous planner, then you've got to pick a better method of spying. I mean, get somebody inside the football club. I don't know what it is that you do.
Turn them,
exactly.
Like the Russians.
Well, precisely.
You're a Russian spy, are you?
Well, I am actually, yeah. I'm being rumbled here again this morning. Like, that is how you do it. Part of me kind of hopes that he's just made it all up yesterday and he's not actually just this meticulous planner. Of course, the whole point is that spying doesn't matter. I know everything about you anyway.
Well, he's right. I wonder, there was a bit about one of the corner kick takers. I can't even remember which one it was now, but he always puts balls.
Harry Wilson.
And that's a specific move. That's his signal. You're thinking those lads need to get slightly better signals. You know, like I know, twice of the ear, touch of the nose, anything other than the two hands up. It's like that's very hard to spot.
Yeah.
Every time he gets the two hands up, there's like a guy at the near post and a guy in the penalty spot, and they're the only ones who don't move. Everybody else moves. Is there a pattern there? I can't see that pattern.
Next time somebody puts their two hands up before a corner and it hits the first man and doesn't reach anybody, that's something I'm going to laugh at because it's a pre-planned move that's gone badly wrong.
Yeah, or else the guy at the front is actually supposed to get there first. Anyway, the other thing that we wanted to talk about this morning was this outstanding piece of skill or else this abomination to the game of Gaelic football. You get to decide. Have a look at this. It's from a Sigerson match. I'm going to stick this up now. So one of the 7 goals scored by UCC. Oh, we're going to have to show that again because you missed it. You're thinking, is it too many hand passes? No. UCC against Athlone IT, hand pass, header into the back of the net. We saw one more time. We can keep this rolling because it takes you a few minutes to actually get used to it. Boom! What a beautiful header. Like, the skull and crossbones obviously on the storied black and red jerseys of UCC.
I really hope that it wasn't actually... So there's one hand pass, 2 hand passes. I really hope it was a kick pass before all that and he didn't need to head the ball into the back of the net. He was just doing it to rub Athlone's face in it.
This is exactly the thing that's going to get the hand pass rule taken out of the book straight away. This is not a skill of our game. This is the skill of a foreign sport. Delete.
Yeah,
that's what's going to happen. Somebody headed the ball at the end of that. We never thought that was going to happen. We thought that something else was going to happen, but not this.
Well, actually, hold on a minute. He had every right to punch the ball into the back of the net.
You can do that, can you?
That's not a hand pass. I've just realised there was absolutely no... what I just said there, being sarcastic, saying I hope he was rubbing Athlone IT's face in it. That's exactly what he was doing. He had absolutely no need to header that ball. That was not a product of the hand pass rule. That would not be counted as a hand pass.
It's a more...
They got rid of the hand pass into the goals rule decades ago.
It's a deadlier weapon. The more you've got, if you're a talented ball player, you've got more control, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I would like to think that 2 hands and palming the ball into the back of the net would give you a little bit more control than a head. Like Maradona had more control with his hand than he did with his head. Everybody has more control with their hands. I really hope we see more of that in terms of inventive ways of scoring when you're absolutely destroying a team. But this was not a product of the hand pass rule. Maybe he thought it was, but you can punch the ball into the back of the net.
So what's going to happen?
Nothing. This was just a funny moment that happened in the Sigerson. I hate to burst your bubble here this morning. It was just a funny moment that happened in a Sigerson game.
You don't think there's outrage around certain committees going, this is soccer? No?
Well, they could come up with like a ban on heading and volleying, and that would be kind of the way they could move forward with this. But this is not, as I say, for the umpteenth time, a product of the new rules. I feel like I'm becoming a bastion of hope for the new rules at this point. Any time that they're going to be chipped away at, I'll stand here and defend them until we see them fully in action. And like that's, I don't know, I like that. It's great, but maybe they'll need to come up with a separate rule to stop it.
Yeah, okay. So coming up, we've got the sports pages at a minute ago. Keith Wood's going to join us at 8:15 this morning. Sports News from 8:35 with Darren. Tim Vickery talking about Marcelo Bielsa is around about 8:45, and then we'll talk about the new GAA rules and a big breaking UFC story overnight from Off the Brawl. Khabib's coach Javier Mendez has demanded an immediate rematch with Conor McGregor in Cowboy Stadium.
That's not how rematches work. The victor demanding a rematch, but anyway.
Let's see. He sees there's a cash cow here.
Oh, sorry, I forgot about the money.
And no chance of defeat.
Forgot about that element of things. It is unusual for a victor to be demanding a rematch, obviously.
UCC scored 726 against Athlone IT.
Yeah, UCC are strong. Very strong.
Should there be a mercy rule in GAA?
No.
Why not?
Because why should there be mercy in any sort of facet of life? Athlone IT will probably beat UCC eventually, and those people who are on the losing UCC side would wish that UCC beat them by 8:36 instead of 7:26.
Why? Paulie Clifford scored 3-1 apparently.
Yeah, he's pretty good.
So, but like he's scoring 3-1 in the game, like there comes a garbage time in that when you players pad out their stats, whereas actually going 25 points up should be a all right, lads, you're not coming back for 25 points. I'm really sorry. You're not very good. They're very good. Let's go. There's no need for anybody to risk injury. There's no need for this. 25 points. Game over.
I think that's an absolute load of
Great
bollocks,
idea.
to be honest. I think that's absolute.
Come on. How
like,
did the Athlone IT players benefit from being absolutely mullered?
thumb crushing like that is the most pleasurable thing about sport.
You're such a prick.
Like when we absolutely muller Italy with our second team of the Six Nations,
yeah,
we're all gonna feel absolutely amazing about ourselves. There'll be a pep in our step saying we are so much more superior to Italy in every facet of life. We're more handsome than them, we're more successful than them, every single part of it. And that is why mullerings should be important, and when they happen, allow them to happen and embrace them.
We are more handsome than Italy, says Kerry Mano and Sheen. Fair play to you.
Well, what's with the kind of geographical
I like your confidence.
specificity there?
Taking you through the newspapers this morning. Time for the newspapers. Going to start with the Irish Times. Connacht, the big winners as Schmidt embraces green energy. Klein ready for 80 minutes of hell against Exeter Chiefs. So it's the squad in action, squad analysis and preview of the Munster-Exeter game this weekend. And then, very quickly here, Bielsa admits to spying on all his championship rivals. Honours even and friends intact as Vieira's Nice hold out Henri's Monaco. So it'd be nice to live in Nice and Monaco, would be the two lads. It's a good lifestyle. They might be the two nicest jobs in world sport.
There is a statement.
Nicest.
There's a statement.
Not best, but like, yeah, I live in, Ez, up the mountain, tootle over to training, where the sun always shines.
Yeah, like it is still living in an environment which isn't particularly welcoming, I'd imagine, Monaco. Unless you're Thierry Henry, maybe.
What do you mean?
Like, say it was you living in Monaco.
There's 1,000 people who go to the games, like, boo, I'm going to go and get into my Lamborghini here. I don't really care that we lost. I'm like sipping on my champagne and I'm probably not getting done for drink driving because I'm driving a Lamborghini.
Yeah, like, if you're living in Monaco, do you think you'd have nice neighbours?
Richard Dunn could be my neighbour.
Yeah, well, other than Richard Dunn is the nicest man who lives in Monaco, I suspect.
Yeah.
Other than that, I can't imagine that it's too much of a welcoming place.
I'd say there's lots of empty apartments that people maintain the residency, Maria.
There's no soul to Monaco, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, so
it's
live
like
in
nice
Nice.
sunshine. Is there soul in Nice?
Yeah, Nice is a beautiful, massive,
When were you in
proper
Nice?
city. I've been to Nice loads.
Right, okay. Well-travelled man.
Well, no, not really. I just got to Nice. Like, I got engaged out the road from Nice.
All right, congratulations.
Thanks very much. It was a while ago. Dub set to lose second Croke Park Super 8 game. Are they though? Are they really? Donegal motion to next month's GAA Congress could force change of fixture scheduling. We'll talk about this a little bit later on. Sexton on course to face England in opener. I mean, he's on course to face them. Does that mean you pick him? I'd say I'm like the only person in the world who thinks that.
Yes, you are.
At this point, get on board. That's. Can I just have a word? I wouldn't like to see Joe Schmidt make that face in the middle of training. Yeah. That's the change rooms that way, lads. Schmidt's Six Nations call-up show Japan tickets up for grabs. Chasing the dub, Shane Walsh says Galway will tweak tactics to progress after they came in for a lot of criticism last year. Class acts, Sigerson wins for UCC, Corny Willerty, last 4 decided. Andy Reid on O'Neill. Nobody in Nottingham gets sick of Clough stories. Well, that's good because they're about to get a load. And Apple's Jade is set for Leopardstown but is a doubt for the champion hurdle. Accidentally showed you the front of the Times there. I apologise for bringing some bad news to your lives. Carty given shock call-up by Schmidt. This is it. 3 uncapped Connacht players have been named in Joe Schmidt's squad and last Guinness Six Nations squad. Caelan Blade, the scrum half. Did we get to Quaylen? Did we get a fine? Because I heard Richie last night was going with Quaylen, which is what it looks like to me.
You just went with Caelan though.
Yeah.
So you've obviously backed.
Tommy saying Keelan. Quaylen Blade, the scrum half, Jack Carty, the fly half, and Tom Farrell, the centre, all included in the 38-man squad. How many do we bring to the World Cup? Is it 38 as well?
I think it's 33.
Oh,
I think it's a smaller squad again by a few, yeah.
This is a preview from the Racing Post ahead of the Andy Murray's Conqueror is up against Batusta Agut.
No, Batusta Agut was Andy Murray's Conqueror.
Sorry, is up against Kachanov, the 22-year-old.
Big one.
Saying they're going to win. And then death of Jardine work rider Galpin in Gallop's tragedy. So Natasha Galpin, a work rider with Ian Jardine, has died following an accident on the Ebor winning trainers Gallops at Curtherstown in Scotland at the age of just 22. A timely reminder that everybody involved in racing are just moments away from tragedy. It's an incredible sport, really. Anyway.
The Herald's lead with Damien Duff saying that Celtic are the only club I'd leave Ireland for, and Unai Emery said he wants friction among Arsenal players. He's not too afraid of infighting if that were to happen at Arsenal. Infighting maybe is a little bit strong, but he likes the edge that's been shown within the Arsenal dressing room. Back page of the Sun, as we've already showed you, is I've spied on every team. Oh, behave. Madcap Argentine reveals full extent of undercover ops. And yeah, baby, he insists none of it has broke rules. Marcelo Bielsa, international man of mystery. Also inside the Sun, if you go inside on the page 54 to bottom left, there is a little head of Marcelo Bielsa, which says, I'm not sure if you can see it here, where is Bielsa? Leeds boss has admitted spying on rivals in the championship. His eyes are everywhere. Check out the rest of today's Sun Sport pages. And each page you go through, there is a little Marcelo Bielsa head hidden there for you to spot. So you can play a game while you're reading the articles in the Sun this morning. It's an added incentive. Back page of the Mirror is drifting towards the end. Petit fears Ozil has lost desire and motivation and is sleepwalking into his retirement. It's an exclusive with John Cross this morning. The back page of the Irish Daily Mail is Byrne dumped. Carty called up ahead of Leinster star in the big shock in yesterday's Six Nations squad. And I spy on you all, admits Leeds boss Bielsa. We should stress again that it is Marcelo Bielsa's interpreter who's actually telling us all of this. But I really hope Bielsa has said something entirely different and the interpreter is actually just taking it upon himself to make this story absolutely gigantic. Back page of the Irish Daily Star is I sent all the spies, Bielsa's sensational admission. And
is that a pun on I had all the pies?
Yes.
Is it?
Yes.
I sent?
Yeah,
I
like once the Sun hoovered up all the spy jokes, the rest of the newspapers are kind of left picking up scraps.
Yeah.
I sent all the spies though. It's a pretty good one when everything else has been taken. It's fine, like.
No, it's terrible.
What would you rather?
I don't know.
Give me something else.
I mean, I haven't.
Can you do better yourself?
Well, it happened yesterday. At what time?
6 or 7 was it?
Yeah, plenty of time for them to come up with something better. No.
Like what would you have said?
I mean, if I had 5 hours, I think I could beat I sent all the spies.
Bielsa, I spied on everyone, says the back of the Guardian. Leeds manager admits sending staff in secret to watch opponents' training, but I did not have bad intentions. We've also got the story here by Sean Ingle. Varnish loses critical employment case against British cycling. So Jess Varnish, the former Great Britain track cyclist, she's lost that employment case that she was taking against British cycling UK sport, which had threatened to overhaul funding for Olympic athletes. So the legal proceedings have been going on for quite some time at this point, since about 2016, but she's lost the case. Her
case was essentially that because she gets a grant to cycle, she is an employee of British Cycling, and they said, no, you're getting a grant from the lottery, so it's the same as a student grant, and we don't have to give you sick pay, we don't have to give you a pension, we don't have to do any of that other stuff. And so you can see both sides. From a legal perspective, the way that is probably accurate if it's also seemingly unfair. Mm-hmm. Like, she's paid to cycle.
Yeah, it's kind of the ancillary cases within this. Like, she's now unable to pursue a claim for unfair dismissal, sex discrimination, and detriment suffered for being a whistleblower against British cycling or UK sport, which you would suspect would have been the next case.
Yeah. Now, maybe all of the other athletes should decide that they're not going to go ahead and represent their country unless they are given the protections of being an employee, because ultimately this is a charter for all of the NGBs to treat those individuals really abominably and do what the hell they want and be completely outside of employment law.
Yeah, not held to account really by anyone.
Yeah, okay, so here's what's coming up. Thursday stories for you. I'm going to talk about Andy Reid, not the footballer, Celtic, the Super 8s in Croker, the GPA rules survey, and we're going to start with the Irish Rugby squad. So this is the big story in most of the newspapers today. A bit of a surprise, really, in the fact that Ross Byrne, after a really excellent performance at the weekend where he pulled the strings, took advantage of the gaps in the Toulouse defence, looked purposeful when running with ball, was accurate in his kicking, not good enough to be in the top 3 out halves in the country at the moment.
Yeah, he might be though. You do wonder if we needed to throw the cat amongst the pigeons to some extent within this Six Nations squad announcement to let everybody know that there are still seats available on the plane to Japan, to let people know that there is always room for a curveball here. And I think the idea of Jack Carty beating Ross Byrne to this particular squad might have actually given other people a bit of hope, no?
Yeah, I think that's exactly what it is. I think it's just to enervate everybody in Irish rugby and go, ooh, I'm not on the outside. I thought I was miles and miles away. I think, how much conversation had there been about Tom Farrell up to this, like in the last 6 or 8 weeks? But he got name checked, I think, before Christmas by Joe Schmidt at something, and all of a sudden it was like, ooh, what, really? And then his performances have obviously been the centre of attention because he's been mentioned. So when he does something good, it gets noticed in a way that maybe it hadn't been. Clearly it had been noticed all the time by Joe Schmidt. So I'd say everybody in Connacht are pretty alive with what's going on at the moment.
And some might even say that Tom Farrell's performances were energised by being name-checked by Joe Schmidt before Christmas as well. And this is the exact point of the Jack Carty inclusion as well, that you'd imagine there will be other people who'll have an upturn in fortunes. Like Joe Schmidt name-checked a lot of other people that weren't in the squad as well yesterday. If you're not in the squad and you weren't name-checked by Schmidt yesterday, you've got a lot of work to do to get to Japan, I suspect.
Yeah. I didn't realise it's 31 in the World Cup squad.
31. Yeah, it's going to be ruthless. It's going to be brutal. There are going to be some top-class rugby players not on that squad, particularly in the back row, if we don't get too many injuries. Yeah,
so the back row obviously was the other area of, not so much of contention, but there was no room for Dan Levy. He's not done for the entire tournament, but at the moment, you would be a little bit worried about that. What's next on our Sports Wire this morning?
So the GPA have gone and done another survey as well. It's kind of, I'm not quite sure when this was actually carried out. So it's obviously in relation to the latest rules. It's them who came up with the proposal that these new rules should not be implemented for the National League, and that's why we have this meeting on Saturday to decide whether or not the rules will be implemented in the National League. So just reading off the Star story today by Carl O'Kane, inter-county GA players and managers, they've come out overwhelmingly against the 3 hand pass restrictions. So the new GPA survey says that some 90% of players and 78% of managers believe the rule has not been a good idea. It's had a negative impact on the future of Gaelic football and the current state of Gaelic football, in fact. And now it seems that it's likely to be binned at Central Council this Saturday. You do wonder how much should actually be read into the survey from a rules committee point of view, considering how vehemently opposed most of the inter-county managers have been to this particular rule. And you can see why they're opposed to it, because they've got systems in place, they've been working on game plans for the last few years, and any rule change would to a certain point kind of scupper a lot of the work that they've been doing. What culture is that creating in a dressing room? Well, you're being led by a manager who's outwardly against all of these rule changes. So when a survey comes to you as a player, what way are you voting? Well, you've kind of been conditioned to think the same way as your manager, and you're probably going to vote against these rule changes. So I'm not so sure if this is actually something that needs to be read into too much come this Saturday. I really think that the pressure from managers and players, the current crop of managers and players,
needs to be ignored.
Not ignored. It needs to be considered and dismissed
until the end of
for like.
We would have 12, 14 years ago, whenever that experiment with the sin bin was in, we would have had the sin bin if the managers had not been listened to and hadn't gone and waged their campaign against the sin bin. And that might have prevented the whole black card, and that might have changed, that might have been a very positive thing for the game. And it's pretty easy to have a stopwatch, click the stopwatch, and 10 minutes later somebody comes back on. It's not the hardest thing in the world to administer. It really isn't. But instead now we have the black card, which is completely open to interpretation. Is that not? Who knows? Why is it at the start of the season and not at the end of the season? Why is it at the start of the game and not at the end of the game? And we've ended up with a complete mishmash of where we're supposed to be. But that's why ignoring the managers now and then having a body of evidence, so in 10 years' time when somebody suggests we need to limit the number of hand passes, we'll have body of evidence that says those games were terrible. Whereas if they do it now, and if they stop it, in 2 years' time everyone's going to be saying the exact same thing. Yeah, for sure. The other big story that's come out from the GEA circles today, it's on the back of the Irish Independent, Martin Breheny reporting that Donegal are going to table a motion at Congress this year that will remove the opportunity for any county in the Super 8s to select Croke Park as their home venue, which of course precludes Dublin from playing 2 games in Croke Park in the Super 8s. Now what happens here? What does Dublin pick if this motion is put through? Now I think the idea of not allowing Dublin to use Croke Park as a neutral venue might have been a better wording of this. Yeah. But the whole point about that was that they didn't want to mention Dublin specifically in this because they wanted this to be kind of a one-size-fits-all rule. But of course, the end result of this is going to be that Dublin might actually have to play a Super 8s game in Parnell Park or else select an outside the county venue as their home venue for the Super 8s. That makes no sense. It makes less sense than the alternative. It makes no sense. Name Dublin. Dublin can't play 2 games. Fair enough. Everybody goes grand. Away we go. It's not anti-Dublin, it's just like, it's the integrity of the competition. It's really easy. This is going to get voted down because people will be like, how will Dublin play home game in Portlaoise? Or Navan? Yeah, where do they go? It probably is Portlaoise. Where is the nearest large ground? Like Navan probably is big enough. This could be the spur to finally get Casement Park fixed, couldn't it? We're going to play all our games in Belfast, screw you. At their home Super 8s game against Tyrone in Belfast. That would really kind of be proving a point. Kerry in Belfast. I'd love a trip to Belfast. A jamboree to Belfast would be absolutely outstanding. All right, okay, so that's the type of stuff that gets shot down because they haven't thought it through. It's definitely the wrong way to do Congress. There's a certain way you do Congress, and this is not it. There should be excuse me, sir, what was most likely, if I write this, am I going to get, or if I do this, what might happen? And they go, oh, yeah. And then it goes, and everybody goes, oh, that's a great idea. Well done. But there isn't. I mean, the former presidents used to perform that function with stuff that they hated. They would just go, we found a reason to kill you. Now, I don't know if they have as much power as they used to have. Yeah, I'm not quite sure about that. We want to talk Celtic briefly because, of course, Damien Duff has gone in as assistant manager to the reserve team. He's been speaking in the newspapers this morning saying that Celtic is the only place he would go if he were to leave Ireland. I didn't realise Damien Duff was such a hummingbird. Yeah, well, he came home straight away. Yeah, like, it's true. He literally have lived anywhere in the world, like made 20, 25 million in his career. Yeah, it's all fair points. Like, is it kind of a sign for people that, are based abroad, that are Irish, that the idea of coming home isn't actually such a bad one? That you can be ambitious, you can go and further your managerial ambitions without actually leaving the country? Well, the irony here is that Damien Duff is actually speaking on behalf of his new role as assistant manager to Celtic reserves team. But Celtic are also in the headlines today. Back at the Star, Brendan Rodgers is weighing up a loan move for James McCarthy. So this could be the kickstart that James McCarthy's career needs going to Celtic. He's obviously been ravaged with injuries recently. Is this, like, I'm trying to think, is this good news or bad news from an Irish perspective? I think it's very good news. Yeah, I think so. I think Brendan Rodgers has done a great job developing players, and I think that he's doing really well there, and who knows, maybe Brendan Rodgers takes him with him wherever he goes next. I think the top of the Scottish Premiership is actually a very, very good place for an Irish international to be playing at the moment. Like, the competitive nature of the Championship being one of the most insanely competitive leagues in the world just kind of hampers some sort of development, as in a change of manager happens so often. Yeah, maybe. It worked out for Matt Doherty. Well, that's a very unusual situation in that I think he got there and the club gets taken over and then all of a sudden loads of great players come in. So, give us your thoughts on that, whether or not playing for a winning side like Celtic is good for the confidence of everybody. Great story from Dave Hannigan today about the backstory of Andy Reid, who is the head coach of the Kansas City Chiefs. That's worth your while this morning. He's had 2 kids who have had issues with drugs in the past. One of them has ended up actually being the defensive lineman coach for the Kansas City Chiefs. He's made a full recovery. His other son died of a drugs overdose while Andy Reid was still the coach at the Philadelphia Eagles. It's a great piece as well, worth your while digging out this morning or doing some background reading on that ahead of the game against the Patriots this weekend.
Andy Reid, he got a lot of traction last week as well because it was absolutely pelting down with snow before the game at Arrowhead, and he did his press conference in shorts. All right. So that's a man. He's got real grit, that man.
He is a hard ass. Right, it's rugby next here on OTB AM with Keith Wood joining us in just a moment. But last night, Tony Ward, Eddie O'Sullivan and David Wallace spoke to Joe about the Six Nations 2019 Rugby World Cup and the Heineken Champions Cup at our Heineken Rugby Club Roadshow down in Garryowen. Here's Tony talking about Ireland's World Cup draw.
We've got to deal with the Six Nations in the moment, as you rightly say, and obviously if we do well in that, that's a springboard to go forward from that again. The big problem in the World Cup, yes, Scotland in the opening game is going to be really difficult, but if we get to the quarter-final, it's not the nightmare scenario, but I can't think of much worse than either South Africa or New Zealand. No matter who we get. Obviously, we prefer to get South Africa, which means we need to win our pool, and then we'll play South Africa in the quarter-final. If we don't win our pool, we play New Zealand. Mm-hmm. So it's a really difficult quarter-final, no matter what way we dress it up.
You can get more of that good stuff at youtube.com/offtheball, or of course you can subscribe to all our rugby podcasts wherever you get your podcasts. Now, Keith Wood, good morning to you. How you doing?
Good morning, Chair. How are you getting on?
I'm very well. We were speculating about whether or not Joe Schmidt actually thinks that Ross Byrne isn't in the top three of his out halves at the moment, and whether or not there's a bit of just making everybody be on edge as the Six Nations starts and ahead of selection for the Rugby World Cup. What's your take on the selection?
I thought the whole selection was very, very good, very strong. The only big omission, of course, I think being Ross Byrne. And I have a huge amount of sympathy for him because he played very well. And we called the game last week against Toulouse. And I thought he was a little bit nervy for the first 15, 20 minutes. But after that, he settled into the game incredibly well with that beautiful kick to the corner. And he has been the man, the third man for him for the last period of time. So there's no reason to think that he wouldn't. But I think he knows what he can get from him. And I think he's also offering up an opportunity to somebody else in a rich vein of form just to see if you get a bit of time inside in the camp. He could have made it really easy for himself and had 4 out halves and said, look, let's not worry about it. Johnny's a bit injured and whatever. I don't know that he necessarily does that very often. I think he's quite happy to put down a marker to say, yeah, I'll take you out for a period of time, but I know exactly what you're like and you can be back in next week. And he's done that in the past too. And sometimes we get caught in a media frenzy of trying to figure out exactly how do you justify what Joe is doing. And I always think you kind of go back to a game of chess with Joe and see the whole board and see what's the rationale behind it. I think he's covering huge options, giving experience to a guy who doesn't have any at this level, getting him into a camp, and this is the opportunity to do it.
Yeah, the other thing is that the whole of the Connacht training camp this week, next week, and for the rest of the Six Nations is going to feel alive with possibility because so many of them have actually made it, and he's been true to his word. He picked out Tom Farrell before Christmas for a mention, and all of a sudden Farrell backs it up with performances, which is the key thing. Then he is actually legitimately in the squad on merit.
Well, and I think so, and I think he has. We sometimes sidestep the influence Joe Schmidt has had in the provincial game because he doesn't just look after Ireland. His energy, his drive, his vision seems to drift into the psyche of everybody else, and he's the guy at the helm for Ireland. And I don't know that we've really had that before. We haven't had it before, where you've got such an attentive coach, obsessive. I love saying to him because he doesn't like it when you say it to him, but he is. And what he wants for Irish rugby is what he wants for himself, which is for Ireland to be very successful. And for that to happen, he kind of has to have an influence further down the line. And it's great while we have him. And then it's what is it going to be like for the next guy and the guy after that? Are they still able to have that level of strategic view going forward? So, look, I think it's exciting, but very, very tough on Ross Byrne.
Yeah.
It probably is. Yeah, like when you think about the kind of array of options as well, that they currently have it out half. We were discussing this with Andy Reid yesterday, and I guess when you go down through the pecking order at number 10, the idea of pitting Carty against Ross Byrne could actually be something that's quite fruitful come the World Cup time. Is he thinking worst case scenario, do you think, Keith, when he goes through the current Six Nations squad?
I think he's thinking best case scenario. I think he's looking to cover everything possible. If you go back to 2015, he was in his job for a period of time, but not a huge amount of time. We had a few injuries. We just didn't have players exposed at that level to be able to step up with enough of experience to do so. I think it's at a point at the moment where Joey Carberry has now got a lot more than we had, and I think it puts Ireland into a strong position. Ross Byrne has got a couple of caps. You don't know what's going to happen over the next period of time, but we're not quite as shallow as we had been, and it doesn't mean that everything is perfect either, by the way. And we get overly excited by our own system and our own structures a lot of time. It still comes down, as Tony Ward said at the very start, to a pretty difficult quarter final, one way or the other. So it's there's a lot of work that has to happen between now and then.
Like, obviously that was a bit of a curveball when it comes to the overall squad yesterday. When it comes to putting forward our best 15 for the England match, do you see Schmidt doing anything kind of like the squad yesterday in terms of curveballs?
No, I don't actually. I think, and I think that in some cases is the outer reaches of the squad. When you get down into the nuts and bolts, there's a lot of players that if you pick them, none of them come across as a curveball. We have a lot of strength and depth in that sort of 30, 32 region, probably out to nearly 40 at this stage. But you wouldn't want all those guys at 38, 39, 40 to be drafted in against England. And England are really gunning for this one. They were embarrassed by it last year. Their coach is struggling because, and you've seen from all the press over the last couple of weeks, the amount of injuries that are there. The fact that English Premiership rugby doesn't seem to be flying the highest flag at the moment. This is a big opportunity for them. So this is the only game they're thinking about at the moment, which I have to say is what Ireland under Joe Schmidt have done before. So we talk about what happens in a quarterfinal in a World Cup. He doesn't. He thinks about it, but he never talks about it. He talks about what's going to happen in this first game and then what's going to happen in the game after that.
I've been banging the drum that I think Joey Carberry should start this game, irrespective of how fit or otherwise Sexton is at the moment. He has been carrying a little bit of a niggle. We haven't yet seen Carberry in a game of this magnitude. Granted, he did start the first test down under against Australia, and as Andy Dunn pointed out the other day, Ireland were leading when he came off and when Sexton came on. So it's not like Schmidt hasn't trusted him in a big game, but it would be great to see him get that full opportunity, just so we know exactly what we have when or if we need it at the World Cup.
Yeah, I'm not sure whether that's the case or not, because I know that Johnny Sexton is the more comfortable one for us in that spot. I'm a fan of Joey Carberry. I mean, I don't have any issue starting him at any stage. I've no issue in making certain that Johnny Sexton doesn't rush back for a game just because it's a big game like this. I think you have to have that level of trust. I think it could happen. I don't know that I'm banging the drum in the same fashion as you are, but I don't have any issue with that whatsoever. I think he's good enough. And I will say that I think Joe Schmidt has trusted him in big games. He's trusted him to come off the bench as a child in Chicago, and deliver. And he did do it. So, look, as I said, I've been saying it from the very start. I was delighted when he went to Munster. I like his reaction after the shock of Castres. I think he got a shock. He hadn't played those games, and that's why there is a bit of merit in your argument. The difficulty in these things are there is an element of momentum. I don't know that you lose momentum, but that's always the fear, that you don't start off on the right foot on the Six Nations and it doesn't work for you, because you just want to win every single game on its own merits. But does that mean if we pick Joey that we don't win it? I don't see that either.
No. And I'm interested in what your take is as somebody who obviously played in Six Nations and played in Six Nations in advance of World Cups. Given our recent success in the Six Nations, there must be a temptation for Schmidt to go, and treat this differently from all the other Six Nations that he's ever been involved in, particularly because he knows the end is coming for him one way or another at the end of the World Cup, and see these two things not as separate competitions but as the precursor to make sure that everything is ready to go come quarter-final time, assuming we make it that far.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure of that rationale, but what I am sure of is that in the last number of years we have blooded a lot of players, and he has not taken risks. And of course he has taken risks at different times. I don't know that you need to turn the Six Nations into something secondary as to a World Cup. I don't believe that should be the mindset of any player or any coach. But I actually think the work that we've done in the last couple of years has given us an opportunity to pick different people at different times. I mean, it's anathema to me, the idea of not being picked on a 15 and being in a sub. That's changed totally. That's the way it was before. There is a recognition that you pick the best team to go out and win any game. That best team could have Joey Carberry in it, because Johnny Sexton isn't fully fit, or whatever other reason or justification we want to say. I'm not as stressed with your idea as I have been in the past. I think the alternatives can still be good enough to win those matches.
Yeah, I get that. One of the things that we were talking about as well is that Ireland's style of rugby at the moment, again, stats from Andy Dunn during the week, whereas the number of rucks that we have in our game is almost twice as many as the next top tier countries. It's natural, and he explained it to us, why do we hit so many rucks, why do we create so many rucks? We tend to look for contact and use that to set up a play. The New Zealanders don't look for contact to set up a play, they look for contact to have an offload, and so therefore they have far fewer rucks than us. It's quite attritional. It means that players do get injured. It means your back rows get shoulders and get broken arms and get all the injuries that we've seen our back rowers have. So you do need that strength and depth. A slight evolution in the Six Nations would be interesting, maybe 30 fewer rucks, still 30 more than everybody else, but just a fewer amount of collisions that we're asking our players to get through, because in the context of a 6-7 week tournament, that will have and will eventually take its toll.
Look, every team has injuries. Actually, if we look at our squad at the present moment in time, we balance that. The style in which we play is probably a style that suits us a lot. And the offloading game does not suit us quite as much. And I would also say, be very careful what you wish for at times, because an awful lot of the offloading games lead to shoulder injuries, because when you fall with an exposed arm. So that can happen in that fact. So you just never quite know. You can't put one exactly to the other. I do think we play quite an attritional game. And you would like to look for a bit of space more often. But I think it's a management of exactly what we have and who we have. I mean, I'm not saying I'm bowing at the altar of Joe, but his past performance has shown that he is able to get the results. He has learned a lot from that World Cup in 2015. I don't think it's just us watching from afar that have bemoaned the fact that we had 5 or 6 guys down when we needed them on that big game. And I think an awful lot of that has changed quite radically since. So from what I've seen from Ireland in the last number of years, we rarely go through a seismic shift, but we do go through really good, attentive changes that make Ireland a better team over a period of time. They're subtle, but they change on a little road. So I actually think we'll see changes through the Six Nations, absolutely. But I don't think we'll ever see it all happen in one fell swoop.
Yeah, because it'd be really nice to see Andrew Porter play a big game and start a big game. It'd be really nice to see Tadhg Byrne start in the second row and show exactly what he can do, because over the course of a World Cup, we will need those players in key moments in big games, and this is literally our last chance, because those World Cup warm-ups are just about getting fitness and getting your eye in. There's no intensity to any of those, as we've always seen traditionally.
Yeah, I still, when I look at Porter, if I look at Tadhg Furlong, Porter and John Ryan, if we get an injury to one of those now, I'm not happy to anybody getting injured, but I'm happy with what we have that can share the load afterwards, and it's, if we suddenly get 2 or 3 of them, where are we? But that's why there was an aim check in that 27 group yesterday from Joe Schmidt. There are enough of people to fit back in at the end of that. So I don't worry about that quite as much. I do worry in other positions, but the more game time they get, you see, one of the other elements, I'm trying to get over my own natural. I'm retired a long time now, right? So when we played, it was, you always want to be picked. Yes, it was about the team, of course it was, but whatever it was, be it an overly macho view on it or whatever, the team now is 30 odd. It's not 15. That's a fairly huge change within it. So if you're asking to say what happens if Andrew Porter has to start a test, well, from what he's actually done in the last period of time, I believe he'd be fine.
Yeah.
And if he gets to 50 minutes, fantastic. You have John Ryan to do it, and vice versa. And you keep seeing an awful lot of the selection at the present moment in time. There's been a drift away from. It is important who starts, but there's a drift away from the first starter. There is a really big drive towards who's the guy with the discipline for the last 30 minutes to close out the game. That has been some of the change that we've seen since 2015.
Keith, I did want to get your take on Munster Champions Cup against Exeter in the last round of the pool matches this weekend. What's your take been on them the last couple of weeks? There has been some suggestions, some comparisons even between this team and the 2008 team. Are we getting ahead of ourselves a little bit?
Absolutely. We have the great capacity of losing the run of ourselves as Irish people. When somebody kicks one goal kick, he's a world-class goal kicker. But Munster played very well. I thought Gloucester were poor last week, but it detracted nothing from Munster and the manner in which they played. I thought it was hard, aggressive, not as well disciplined as they would like. There's a lot to work on for that. They gave double-digit penalties, which they hate. I thought Joey Carberry was fantastic. All I want to see at the present moment in time is Chris Farrell get a run of games at centre. I want to see him play. He's just different. And when we're looking at things for Ireland or for Munster, different is great. But he gets over the gain line. He is a bit of a bully with the ball in hand, which is a great thing to have. He hasn't even shown some of the subtlety of which he's incredibly capable of. So Munster looked like a better balanced team when he plays in it. So I just wanted to see him play for a while. And I just thought Joey was excellent. And I also thought Conor Murray had gone back to a much higher level. He was out for a long time with a bad injury, and it's taken him a bit of time to get back into it. But he showed last weekend, yeah, you know what, he's fully back up. And Munster just did a better structure. But then you go to this weekend, and it's going to be bloody freezing Thomond Park, and Exeter were, have been so up and down this year for a team that is the most consistent team. And they really struggled for 3 or 4 weeks. They got back to their right winning ways with Noel playing 15. Suddenly they were, they'd mixed it up a bit more than they had to. They'd gone under pressure. They'd gone very conservative, what a lot of teams do. They expanded that last weekend, and they looked an awful lot better for it. So they are a team that could do Munster damage in Thomond Park.
Yeah, it's going to be a proper end of season humdinger and lots on the line for that one. I did want to get your thoughts on how the England squad is going to be named ahead of the game against Ireland. They have some injury worries, but even when you kind of take into account the injury worries they have, I'm looking at a list of available backs for them. Mike Brown is pushing hard for a recall. It says Elliot Daly, Jack Nowell, Johnny May, Chris Ashton, Henry Slade, Ben Teo, Manu Tuilagi and Alex Lazowski are the backs that they have just for the back three and centres. That's not bad.
Now, England are rarely, if ever, bad. And one of the things about them is, and I'd often go between the Irish and the English psyche, we're getting to a level where we can deal with confidence fairly well. And it's by proving it for every second of the game afterwards. England have an inherent confidence, arrogance, we would always say when we're trying to point fingers at them or slag them off. But it's an arrogance that I often think it makes them have a couple of hiccups along the line, but when things aren't going their way, it pushes them up a further level than other teams. They have an ability they still expect to win, irrespective of what's happening. And they are hurt by what happened last year, and they're gunning for us. So I do think they've injuries. I do think they've players back. Manu Tuilagi is of colossal importance to England, only because, right, he's a fine player and he's very powerful and he's a really good ball carrier. He gets over the gain line. He knows where the line is. But also there's an expectation that other players play incredibly well around him and often. And they've missed him for a while. So they've missed him and they've missed Billy Vunipola. And those players do an awful lot for them. And it just makes them, even just for the want of 2 or 3 players, England can suddenly get back to a level of confidence. Might take other countries a period of time. They don't have to bypass all of that. They just go straight into full confidence mode.
Yeah, that arrogance must be fairly frustrating to come up against when they're in their pomp.
Yeah, thanks for reminding me of that. And I did for a lot of it in their pomp. And it's funny because it's an arrogance on... It's kind of like a sense of arrogance. And a lot of the players aren't arrogant. It's an unusual element. So for a lot of those guys, I only beat them... I think we only beat England once in my time. A lot of that has changed now, and it's very hard to be arrogant when you've been beaten a lot.
Yeah, I'm sure. Go on.
Well, there is still some sort of... I guess it goes back to your previous answer, Keith. There is kind of a sense that they should be arrogant, that if they can find that arrogance again, it's going to be hugely positive for the outcome of this team. And maybe it is a result against Ireland that they need. It does seem, kind of going back to what you said, that it is just one spark is all this English team needs to kind of get back to that level of superiority, and that complex feeds into further success, you'd imagine.
Well, I think if I go back, they won the World Cup in 2003. In 2007, they were in absolute shambles and got to the final. You know, we haven't got past the quarterfinal. So there are elements of this. Look at the draw. There's a whole variety of different things, but they still expect to go and win all the time. That hasn't necessarily been a very comfortable Irish psyche. Now we're trying to get to it, but we're trying to get to it without losing the run of ourselves. You know, that's we win a game in Gloucester. And because Gloucester sits into the Munster history annals for all those kind of mad wins and the miracle match, that because of that game, we are now automatically at the level where we've been with the teams that won in 06 or 08. So it's not the same.
Good stuff, Keith. Thanks for joining us this morning. Cheers.
Cheers, gents.
It's Keith Wood with us this morning, giving us some perspective ahead of Ireland against England. Are you worried?
What's a more dangerous threat to humanity, Corkness or English arrogance?
It's mad how similar they are, isn't it?
It is. It really is. They're the exact same thing.
I was kind of thinking that Cork is the only post-colonial superiority complex in the world that I know of. Yeah. We were colonised, but we're better than you.
Yeah, that's it's quite true. Well, a lot of Yanks as well.
Yeah, maybe. That's a bit different.
Certain parts of America.
They're also imperial.
Yeah.
Maybe Cork less imperial. Although maybe not. Maybe they've taken over Ireland. Right, let's move on. We're going to go and bring you... I've just deleted what we were going to bring you. So it's Damien Delaney from last night talking... Is this the Roma piece? The lads were asking about Roma. No, it's not the Roma piece. It's he was on the show last night, and here's the clip.
I want to ask you about Palace and one game actually in particular, because it's a game I was commentating on and stands out above any other really of the last 5-6 years. Was the night of the 3-3 draw with Liverpool. And for all the games I've ever been to, I do not remember an atmosphere quite like Selhurst Park that night when you were 3-0 down. And remember, Liverpool had just been beaten by Chelsea the week before, and they needed, if they'd won that game 8 or 9-0, they could have closed the goal difference gap in City. Nobody thought it would happen until they found themselves 3-0 up earlier, and they could have actually found themselves 7 or 8-0 up. You kept it at 3-0, and you scored this brilliant goal with 12 minutes left, and you scored 3 goals in the space of 9 minutes. 3-all. Steven Gerrard, Luis Suarez are in tears, and the place was literally hopping. The ground was shaking underneath us. What's your memory of that night?
You just what you said there, really. You know, I mean, the first 78 minutes was an absolute catastrophe. Like, you know, we couldn't do anything right. And remember, Tony, it was the first time Tony Pulis really, you know, showed his teeth at us at half time. You know, we were well safe by then. You know, I think we were guaranteed top half as well. I think we were 9th or 10th at the time. And I think maybe the first 78 minutes we played a little bit like that. But the players that we had there at the time, their attitudes and their kind of just willingness just to keep going in the face of anything, that's what we kind of had. And obviously when that goal went in, it just kind of, and the crowd then was just, fantastic. Because, 3-0 at home, it was quite easy for some people to head off. It was a Monday night game. Getting away from Selhurst isn't the easiest thing in the world. A lot of people might have made their way away, but they didn't. They stayed, and the drums are still going, and it was such a party atmosphere, even though we were losing 3-0. And then obviously when that goal goes in, and then Gailey got 2. So, it was a fantastic night, and it's definitely one that I'll remember for the rest of my life, really.
Yeah. All right. You can get more of that good stuff on the Football Show podcast from last night. And now Darren's here.
Morning, Ger. We'll start with the golf, and Shane Lowry is hoping to build on his stunning start at the Abu Dhabi Championship. The Offaly man says a peaceful Christmas break and his best ever pre-season helped record his best ever round as a pro. Lowry carded a 10 under par course record equaling round of 62 to open. That handed him a 3-shot advantage at the top of the leaderboard yesterday. He's since now been joined on 10 under by Lee Westwood, and Lowry is just teeing off. He's parred the first hole there, so he remains on 10 under. Derby County came from 2 goals down last night for the second time against Southampton. The championship side managed to force a 2-2 draw and penalties before winning the shootout 5-3 to book their place in the 4th round of the FA Cup. Republic of Ireland international Richard Keogh was the Derby hero. The captain scored the winning penalty to set up a tie with League One side Accrington Stanley. Damien Duff has a word of warning for his new Celtic players. You must be prepared to do anything to make it at the game, including running over your granny. The Ireland legend was speaking after being named as reserve coach of the Scottish Giants. Duff believes modern players are not working hard enough to realise their dreams, and he wants to help them change that.
I feel like I'm learning the game all over again. The minute you stand on a touchline, it's totally different viewpoint. So I'm only a baby. I'm a year and a half, 2 years in. So yeah, it's a massive role, but I'm going to embrace it. And even away from the pitch, just getting into the lads' heads what it takes to be a footballer. I think across the board, not Celtic, but in England, Ireland, Scotland, lads just do enough, and they think just doing enough is going to get you to be a footballer, but it's not. You have to do more than enough every day and empty the tank. And it's just that obsession. I would have done anything when I was a kid, 16, to be a footballer. I'd have run over me granny, but that's what it is. It's being that mongrel, and I said away from the pitch, teaching them that. On the pitch, I said I'm learning, but I'll help them all I can out there. I'm on them 24/7. Out there, I'm full on, I'm passionate, I'm emotional. So once they realise it's not me just being a pain, it's just because I care and I want to help.
Imagine that a scout comes to say, right, we've picked you, you're coming to join the Manchester City Academy. First things first, teach your grandmother.
It's great though, because I didn't realise, is that like a football phrase, kill your granny?
John Giles
used it. Like, would he kill his granny? That's the metric of the strength of the character, and Duff used it there. I wasn't familiar with it until I noticed both.
Most grannies, to like most young people, are like quite old, have lived a good life, had a good innings, are good for, in fairness, presents/money fairly regularly. So you're losing a little bit on that. But if
worthy trade-off.
I'm getting a contract.
So it's an actual, is it an actual saying? Have I just missed this entire saying my whole life and have just been blessed with it when I hear Gilesy and Duff use it now?
Unless Duff got it from Giles, I would presume.
It's hard to know. Yeah, I've heard.
As he said it in such a way as like it's.
It was so matter of fact though. He's like, would he kill his granny? I don't think he would, so I don't think he's a great player. And Duff said it in a way that would make you believe that he's the perfect man to be guiding the
first time I would have heard Jazzy use it would have been about himself as well, the way Duff just used it.
Really?
Yeah.
So maybe it is a well-known expression. Duff's press conference was really interesting. He was asked about Celtic. He said Irish people have it in their blood. He said every Irish person wants to be involved in some way with Celtic. No one teaches you about Celtic. You just learn to love it. And he also mentioned his own experiences with Celtic. He was asked, have you been to see Celtic? He said, yeah, I've never been sober, so I look forward to seeing it with clear eyes. We'll get the highlights of Damien Duff's press conference up across offtheball.com later today. Now, Cillian Brennan has called time on his glittering League of Ireland career. The Drogheda native began with the football equivalent of the Celtic Tiger, making 16 appearances for Dublin City in 2003 before they went defunct. He went on to play with Derry City, Bows and Shamrock Rovers, as well as Drogheda and St. Pat's. The midfielder has won 3 league winners' medals. He won the FAI Cup 3 times, the League Cup 5 times, and was the Player of the Year in 2013. Brennan called time on his career on Facebook, saying, "Like to announce my retirement from the League of Ireland. Had the pleasure of meeting some great people along the way. I'll very much miss the buzz of a Friday night. Peace out, killers." Dublin could be stripped of home advantage in the Super 8s next year. Donegal will table a motion before Congress next month calling for no county to be allowed to designate Croke Park as a home venue in the Super 8s. The Ulster side, who were beaten by Dublin in the opening round, bemoaned Croke Park being designated a neutral venue as well as being used as Dublin's home venue for the game against Roscommon. The CCCC, though, never designated the first round as a neutral venue. Those games were always fixed as the Croke Park round. The wording of the original motion, which passed 76-24, stated that each team will play one home match, one match away and one match at Croke Park. The Donegal chairman, Michael McGrath, told the Irish Independent, "We haven't mentioned Dublin in the motion. We're just calling for no county to be allowed to nominate Croke Park as a home venue. We think that's fair to everybody." If the Donegal motion is passed by Congress and Dublin reach the Super 8s, they'll either have to play their home game in Parnell Park with a capacity of 9,500 people or at a bigger venue outside the county. Last year in the Super 8s, Dublin attracted 33,000 people to watch them beat Roscommon, while the game against Donegal, also in Croke Park in the Super 8s, was attended by 53,000 people. Joe Schmidt has named a 38-man squad for the first two rounds of the Six Nations, among them 3 uncapped players, all coming from Connacht. Centre Tom Farrell, out-half Jack Carty and scrum-half Caelan Blade all get the nod. Carty's inclusion comes at the expense of Ross Byrne. There's no Dan Levy either, but Joe Schmidt says the Leinster flanker will likely return when fully fit. Well, the Ireland women's head coach Adam Griggs has named 8 uncapped players in his 29-man squad for Sunday's Six Nations warm-up game with Wales. Leinster trio Hannah O'Connell, Linda Dujang and Alva Dowling get the nod. Also earning first calls are Ulster duo Catherine Dane and Claire Bowles. Completing the new faces are Munster's Enya Breen and Claire Keown, while Connacht's Anne-Marie O'Hara has also made the cut. Ireland begin their Six Nations campaign against England at Donnybrook on the 1st of February. Well, in tennis, Milos Raonic secured a spot in the next round of the Australian Open this morning with a brilliant 6-7, 7-6, 7-6, 7-6 victory against Dan Wawrinka. It was one of the best matches so far of the opening round, and the Canadian served his way out of danger. Also in action today, Serena and Venus Williams aiming to reach the third round.
All right, good stuff, Darren. Thanks very much for that. Now, Newell's Old Boys were also tweeting last night about, now you know why we named the stadium after their stadium is the Estadio Marcelo A. Bielsa. And I'm delighted to say Tim Vickery is on the line to tell us about the man who seemed to win football yesterday with his press conference at Leeds United. Tim, a bushfire swept the internet yesterday afternoon, suggesting that Bielsa was about to step away as the manager of Leeds United after the Spygate controversy. And in fact, nothing could be further from the truth. He just opened his books and decided, yeah, of course I've been spying. I've been watching everything because I am the all-seeing, all-knowing man of football.
Indeed, yeah. Marcelo Bielsa probably would kill his granny, but he'd do it very surgically and he'd enjoy apologising for it afterwards. He is, I mean, I've told this story so many times before, so please don't stop me if you've heard this one before. But I would like to tell you about the first time that I encountered him 20 years ago now. He was coach of Argentina at the time. It was the 1999 Copa America. His side had just lost 3-0 to Colombia. He'd watched his centre-forward miss 3 penalties, and he himself, Bielsa, had been sent off. And the first question in the press conference, Marcelo, what did you make of the refereeing? And he just stares at this, a play. He doesn't make eye contact with anyone, just staring into space. And he said, well, one doesn't have the habit of commenting on the activities of the match day officials. But what I will say is that in respect of my expulsion, the referee was entirely correct because I protested in an ill-mannered form. And I'm thinking, bring it on. Let's have some more of this. And exactly as you said, when the press conference was announced yesterday, my heart's in my mouth thinking he's going to walk. He's going to walk. I was worried as soon as Leeds issued that statement saying that they had to remind him of the club's integrity and honesty. I thought, well, he may walk. He's got a track record of doing that. Instead of which, he gave us a masterclass. And I think his professional pride had been wounded by these accusations. So there were 2 points that he wanted to respond to. One, the idea that he had been cheating. And as he says, I mean, this is not against the letter of the law. He will now, I think, accept that it may be against the spirit of the law as it's interpreted in England, and I think he may decease in these spying activities now. But also he wanted to especially address the point that sending these little last-minute spies was the factor that was helping him win football matches. I think his professional pride was really stung by that. So what he was going to do, he was going to show you, you were going to get a glimpse into the mind and the match day preparations of Marcelo Bielsa. And what a masterclass he gave you. And you really see there that this isn't a profession for the mentally sane, is it? I mean, the hours and hours and hours of preparation that go in. You wonder after all of their tactics and their variations were surgically explained, you wonder if Derby County now regret the bleating and the moaning that they did after it. So Bielsa has come out making his point, showing us exactly the hard work that goes on behind the scenes, all of the insane levels of preparation. I remember him once when he was still in Argentina saying to a player there, a player asked him, "Don't you ever sleep?" And Bielsa said, "While you're sleeping, I'm thinking of ways for the team to win." That's Marcelo Bielsa, and what an asset he is to English football.
Yeah, like I did wonder, and I guess the answer to this question is no, Tim, because you've obviously heard things about Marcelo Bielsa in previous iterations about him being this freak of detail, being on an attention level that is above most other managers in the world. So this mustn't have come as any big surprise to you yesterday when he opened to what was to us really a Pandora's box of evidence.
No, I've been rubbing my hands with glee ever since he came to England, because I've been thinking, oh, it's so different from the old days when the substance of the team talk was, well, that's their side, we're better, go out and beat them. I mean, I think the baseline is Bielsa probably believes that, but he's going to give his team every bit of information. And he watches video after video after video. He seems to have six eyes, because he can watch 3 games at the same time and draw rational and intelligent conclusions about them. He is a one-off, and he's not really a product specifically of Argentine football culture. He's a product of Marcelo Bielsa, and he's from a very distinguished family in the city of Rosario, a very distinguished family of lawyers. I mean, his brother was an extremely prominent politician, and he was something of the black sheep of the family going into football. But he went into it with everything, and once he saw that he wasn't going to make the grade as a player, he chucked that up and went into coaching, and he has given that everything. And he hasn't won, and as he himself would be the first to point out, and he almost enjoys pointing out, he hasn't won that many titles, but few coaches in world football are as influential as Marcelo Bielsa. He is the career who has launched 1,000 careers.
Yeah, no, that's true, and we've kind of seen that. There has been a massive outcry, though, from English football, which seems not to really tally with their own core values, the whole sense that actually perhaps English football has had its own blind spot about this in a way.
Yeah, it definitely seems that way, doesn't it? I think, as Tim mentions there, I think Derby County look a little bit foolish now, do they? Like, I don't think they expected this sort of response. And I see Martin Keown complaining as well in the newspapers this morning that we should be upholding ourselves to higher values. He who screams in the face of Ruud van Nistelrooy after missing a penalty. There is kind of an irony here, Tim, isn't there? Snobbishness almost from the protectors of English football.
Yeah, well, I am English, and I've spent the last few days laughing at Morecambe and Wise and listening to madness. You can't get much more English than that. But, 25 years on the other side of the Atlantic have given me a little bit of a perspective. And I think maybe there are 2 great gifts that England has given to the world. One is football, and 2 is hypocrisy. And both of them come together with the Marcelo Bielsa story.
Yeah, it's amazing. One of the things that strikes me now is just how successful he's been and how quickly he's been successful in English football. That it's weird, and it's I guess it's a knock on English football. Nobody has thought to get this guy involved up to this point.
Yeah, perhaps, although the big test is coming. Bielsa's few league titles, when they came in Argentina, when Argentina was playing the very short season, just the teams playing each other once, 19 games. In his previous times in Europe, because it's a very, very intense method of play, really intense. You've got to run. If you're going to press the opposition in their half of the field, it's a physically exhausting type of football. And we've seen both with Bilbao and with Marseille that the side started very, very well, but really physically they ran out of steam in the business end of the season. So it's going to be very, very interesting to judge Bielsa's work with Leeds from kind of mid-February on. Business end of the season, when you really need the points, how much will his Leeds team still have in the tank? And I think we need to defer judgment until then, because that's always been his stumbling block in Europe. Let's see if he falls over that one more time.
It's interesting kind of listening to that, about the high octane level that Bielsa goes to, because you say he's a product of himself rather than being a product of any sort of environment he's been in. But at the same time, that high octane type of management is exactly what is popular at the moment. Is it exactly what is successful at the moment? If you look at the top of the Premier League, you look at Pep Guardiola, you look at Jurgen Klopp, you look at Unai Emery almost kicking every single ball for that Arsenal team. So there are similarities between Bielsa on kind of a superficial level, I guess, and the rest of the footballing world right now and what is on vogue.
Yeah, very much so. And he was Bielsa was one of the very few people who Guardiola consulted before launching his own career. There's quite a lot of Holland. The whole old Holland 74 in what Bielsa does. Sampaoli tried it. It was disastrous for Argentina in the last World Cup, but it's been successful for the Chilean national team and for Sevilla. Sampaoli is a self-confessed Bielsa disciple. He once wrote, before they'd even met, he once wrote to Bielsa apologising for having been unable to put his idea into practice in a satisfactory manner with one of his early clubs. So this is a school of football which has its devotees in the top echelons of the world game, and it seldom makes for a dull match, because Bielsa's sides, they set out to impose themselves on the game. They will give the other side the opportunity to play on the counter-attack. So when it comes unstuck, it can come very badly unstuck. But it doesn't mean that there are too many cautious 0-0 draws, because his sides set out to strangle you in your own half of the field and really impose themselves on the match.
Tim, I just wanted to ask you a quick question about Gonzalo Higuain before we let you go here. What's the standing of Higuain at the moment? Is he anywhere near as good as he has been in the past? Is there a possibility that he has some kind of late flowering in his career and that a move is exactly what he needs to regain some of the form that made him one of the best strikers in Europe for a period there?
Well, on the plus side, he would seem to be the type of player that Chelsea need, and the coach knows him very well from working together. On the negative side, you'd worry about his age going into the Premier League at this stage in his career, and he is a player who sometimes, he looks so sluggish. He looks like he's pulling a tractor behind him. And a tendency perhaps to put on a little bit too much weight. So I'm a little bit doubtful about whether he can be a consistent goal scorer at this stage in his career in the Premiership. Perhaps more interested in Chelsea's attempts to sign Leandro Paredes, another Argentine from Zenit in Russia, because he would be an interesting backup, I think, to Jorginho, a kind of midfielder with a lovely range of passing who can dictate play from deep.
Okay, good stuff. Thanks very much for joining us this morning. It looks like it's a nice sunny summer's morning in Rio.
Yeah, the long hot summer's not passing me by. You get me up and out of bed very, very early so I can enjoy this wonderful sunshine.
Very good stuff. Thanks a million for joining us, Tim.
Thank you, my pleasure.
Tim Vickery online from Rio. Apparently it's 26 degrees.
I was beginning to feel guilty for getting him up out of bed so early. No longer do I feel guilty.
Yeah, because at least it was sunny. I was a bit concerned that it might be darkness there as well, because it's supposed to be the middle of the night, but they're actually only 2 hours behind us now.
Happy days. I did not know that. Ignorance is bliss. And ignorance is not something, nice segue here, that Marcelo Bielsa seems to deal with. That was quite interesting. It's the uniqueness that he's brought to football, and that seems to have been inspired within Bielsa somewhere. It's kind of hard to actually pinpoint who exactly he was inspired by, but it definitely seems that he fits in with modern football quite well. He's in the right place at the right time without being influenced by his contemporaries too much, I think it's fair to say.
If you were the owner of a mid-ranking Premier League team, do you offer him, here's double your wages, thanks very much, let's go? If you're Everton, let's go.
I think so. I think this is really, it's going to do good things for the stock of Bielsa in the United Kingdom. I really think it is. Obviously they're on course to get promotion. Lasting the course in the Championship is tough for any team, but a team with this amount of intense level of kind of scrutiny is going to be even tougher again. So do they last the course?
Should they have made him the Arsenal manager in retrospect?
I think that would have been a massive gamble. I think.
Why though? Like, what, he's been around the world. He's managed teams that have been very respected. Never had the right resources to implement with good players his strategy.
Yeah.
Maybe he's just a little bit difficult to deal with. There must be something there that has prevented
There must have been, and I can't imagine they looked at Unai Emery and said he's exactly the easiest man to deal with, but certainly a bit more pleasant, it seems, than Bielsa. Also, as well, he's managed in the Champions League. He's won 3 consecutive Europa League titles, which is the European competition that Arsenal are in. He's worked with, egotistical talents at Paris Saint-Germain. He was a far better. Like, hindsight is such an easy thing to utilise. But at the time, Unai Emery was a far superior.
I don't think Emery's been bad so far. I think that he's got Arsenal at the level they're at. They just need to invest a little bit and fix the problems. But at least somebody's diagnosing those problems for us. So Shane Lowry's out on the course. Par the first, the par 5 second thing's not going to plan. He's got an up and down to try and save par on that one. So he was still in a share at 10 under of the lead alongside Lee Westwood, and we'll get back to that in just a minute for you. But here's a taster from our special show around the launch of Comórtas Pella, Páidí O'Shea earlier on this week. Kieran Donaghy, Micheál Moore-Hartig, Eileen Lawler and Billy Keane were among the guests. Donaghy confirmed his aspirations to get into GAA coaching. Have a look.
I only be basketball or football, I'd be always trying to pick out things, trying to improve us. I'd rarely look at, I always did my own thing, but I'd always be trying to figure out how can we work better as a forward unit, talk to the managers. Yeah. And I was always lucky enough that I had great relationships with all of my managers that I could go to them with stuff, and sometimes, don't worry, they'd laugh me off with some of my suggestions, but sometimes they might take them on board.
I only ask because in Billy Keane we have an All-Ireland winning assistant manager who might be available to come on board with
Bring
you.
Bring him in.
And psychologist.
And psychologist,
A 2 for 1.
You're not to forget me now.
No,
we all trained the team in Dublin for years. Did you know that?
Yes, famously. What years did you train the Kerry team? 80s, wasn't it?
Oh, I started it in the 50s, unofficially. And I finished up, I think it was around 1989, when Páidí and those left the scene, that wonderful team. I decided I wouldn't train anymore. Right. I had some of the best players that ever played. And we had great fun. And the last thing every night in training, I used to bring a golf club with me, a 9-iron. We'd place it on the white line at the corner flag. You had to be within a certain distance of the line to be the winner. It wasn't the longest always. It was which one would be a certain distance but nearest to the line.
Sounds like they had crack. We're the best footballers that's ever lived. We're living in Dublin. We don't have to do all that crappy training that Miko's making them do. No laps. Micheál, come on, no laps. You're not going to tell us, are you? We did the laps, Micheál, and away you go.
Yeah, I somehow suspect that Micheál Moore-Hartig, the very kind and caring gentleman, wasn't a bit of a hard ass on the training pitch sometimes. Like, to win All Irelands and to maintain that level of fitness, I'd say he ran them to the ground. I'd say he was probably worse than Miko.
No way.
And then he just kind of todders out of wherever they were training, St. Pat's, I think, in Drumcondra, and just smiling away to himself, having put them through the ringer. And those cute anecdotes kind of just try and show it as a bit of crack. I'd say he ran them to the ground.
That stuff was great from Tuesday night. You can get all of that as well on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/offtheball. Now, Stephen Doyle popped out to Croke Park yesterday for the launch of the Allianz Football Leagues. He caught up with the Monaghan star Ryan Wiley and the Kerry forward Stephen O'Brien to get their thoughts on the experimental GAA rules that are being voted on this Saturday. Have a look.
Do you think the new rules are going to survive into the league?
Yeah, I'm not sure. No, I didn't talk to a few lads there. No, it'd be 5 years of him. Like, I didn't realise that like whatever rules implemented is in there for 5 years. So, most of the rules are good. Now, in fairness, I'm not really sure about some of the hand pass rules. It's just going to be so difficult for referees to referee when they're trying to. You're trying to count the steps of the player. You can count, has he hopped it twice? You're trying to look inside to the inside forward, see if there's any dragging. And then you might miss a hand pass there. So. And like, I'm not sure it's going to stop a good few attacking moves as well. So no, it's like we're going to try to kick as much as we can anyway. We don't need the rule to tell us that, but yeah, I'd rather that rule. But like the simple rule would be brilliant. Stop kind of fouls at the end of the towards the end of the game would be excellent, and it won't punish the player that does get a black card too much as well. I got one early against Munster final versus a silly tackle off from a short kick out. And then that was my day done, so there's a long, so maybe it'll hurt the team that you go down to 14, but the player at least maybe can come back on. So that's important.
Just to ask you finally then, if there was one rule you could bring in yourself, what would it be to help maybe improve the game?
I think the game is in good health as it is. Like, obviously you want to tweak it the whole time, but yeah, like we're talking there, I don't have to put too much thought of it. Like, basketball now probably, like, they made the rules, like the shot clock, even something like that. Yeah. If you had a minute for an attack, maybe that stops the kind of possession at the end of the I suppose that was what the hand pass rule was trying to look at. So maybe, if you had a set time for attack and there was a shot clock or whatever, you had to work attack. Yeah. Or like they have the half court press as well. I'm not sure how is that feasible, but something like that maybe that will stop a team kind of just killing the game at the end by just with sterile kind of possession. But at the end of the day, it's that team's right. It's their right because they're winning the game. They can do whatever they want. It's important to go into the game, or if you go into that period with a lead, you're going to try to protect it. So maybe that would be something to be thought of. I don't know.
I imagine a lot of the training this year has been based around the fact that the new rules have come in, and has that made training a little bit harder?
It's probably just different, trying to get used to them, and with the past, there's different rules. There's 5 new rules there to get used to, but just within training and stuff, maybe it's helping us kick in the marks and helping us our first touch and stuff. But it'll be interesting to see what happens now this weekend, whether they're gonna come in or not. But we haven't been ignorant to the fact and completely not used to rules, so we're training away with them, and hopefully it'll improve us.
Do you think the rules will survive into the league? What's your kind of feeling on it now?
To be honest, I don't know what way the delegate's going to go, but I only found out, I didn't realise that if they come in, they're only in for league and then not in for championship. So I find that a bit bizarre, that if you're throwing so much in the league and then they're going to be scrapped then for the championship and back. I think that's probably the weirdest thing of them all. But I think it's very tough on referees, and it's going to leave it tough again and for the club referees to doing an unreal job at the minute, and they don't probably get enough praise for it, and they have a tough enough job. They have so much to be taken care of, never mind counting now hand passes and marks and stuff, and was it 20 metres and stuff like this. So I think it'd be hard for them to come in, but I don't know what way people are going to vote.
Yeah. Do you think they should come in, or is there any of the rules that you would look at and say, look, we need to scrap that and just maybe think of something different?
Sin bin is probably the best rule, that your game's not finished if you get a black card, but it puts your team under a lot of pressure, which is still given, you're sacrificing, or you're leaving your team with less players, which is obviously going to the other team's advantage. So the other team's still getting an advantage if you're showing cynical play. I thought that was a very good rule. But the other one's I think it's just going to be too tough to implement, and you don't want, well, obviously next summer in the league, you don't want to be players or going up or down divisions, probably more, you know what I mean, just because maybe just a bad decision by a referee, and a footballer can make a bad call. It's just as well as a referee, and you don't want headlines to be about bad decision. You want headlines to be about what sort of score it was, how good of a game was. You don't want that all over the papers.
Yeah, interesting stuff there from the two lads. It's clear that they hadn't engaged too much with that whole process of what the story is with these rules, how long they'll be in for, because if this vote happens, they'll be in for the league and that's it. There'll be a review at the end of that, not for 5 years, as Stephen O'Brien was saying. And Drew White was like, I didn't realise they were just in for the league and not the championship. I would have assumed that this is something that has been widely debated amongst the players, but it turns out they are too busy with their lives, training and playing football and getting on with stuff, and that's interesting, because you would have thought that maybe, I don't know whose job that is. Is that the GPA's job, or is it actually the GAA's job?
To what, inform the players?
Okay,
the one thing I think we can take from this is you're bang on there. GAA players, especially inter-county players at the moment, are struggling to keep their head above water in terms of actually managing time to play for their county, potentially play for their college, whatever it may be, getting into physical shape for the start of the National League. They're not consuming the discourse around this. They're not really looking too much into the rules. They'll probably think about it once it's actually decided whether or not it's going to be in for the National League, which kind of comes back to this point. How much should, say, the GPA survey that's in the newspapers this morning actually be considered when it comes to the Rules Committee this Saturday? Of course it should should be listened to, but should it be a real consideration? 90% of inter-county players don't want this hand-pass rule implemented. Well, clearly there's a good percentage of people that don't really know what it's all about, and I think we really do need to get to the other side of the National League, and it makes the climb down from the Rules Committee all the more spectacular that they've actually changed their mind on this, that they decided to not implement it automatically for the National League and reconsider and have the vote before the National League. I think they should have stuck by their guns and had that vote afterwards.
Yeah, but presumably that's just window dressing and this is just rubber stamp this weekend. If it's anything
no,
other than
but
that,
reading Carlo Kane this morning, it does seem that there's a realistic possibility that this thing doesn't get through on Saturday.
The whole thing, all of it.
The hand-passing rule.
Just the hand-pass.
Yes.
Okay, so everything else gets through.
By the sounds of things, yeah. Like the hand-pass rule is the one thing here that it's the most likely to not get through. I think in general, the rest of them will probably
Were there many
test.
Were there many matches in the league where you would have seen the defensive football that we saw in that Slot Neal game? I don't think so.
Well, that's a spectacular example, the Slot Neal game, I think.
Yeah, but that's like, I mean,
for example, I don't think
league points are up for grabs. Ooh, things aren't going well for Shane Lowry. He's had a bogey on the second hole, so he's down to 9 under, and we're just seeing him drop now beside a footpath. This looks like it's on his third hole, so he's been wayward in the first 3 holes, and that's not great.
The thing about the defensive football is I'd be fairly confident in saying that Carlo, for example, would have been more offensive when they got promoted from Division 4 than they would have been in that terrible Leinster semi-final against Laois in Croke Park last summer. I would say the defensive football of, say, in terms of a defensive system that was very solid from a Galway perspective last year in the Football League, that was worked on throughout the Football League and then was implemented in the Championship. Of course, they weren't overly defensive, but there was certainly more of an edge and more numbers in a mass defence than there was in previous years. So it's kind of a bit of both, really. It is the weaker teams that are implementing more defensively in the summer than they are in the league, and it comes back to this. The old chestnut that if similar teams were playing similar standard matches against one another, then you'd have
over a period of time.
Football.
Yeah, well, and it wouldn't be an overnight fix because there would be loads of teams who still are stuck in the training sessions that they've been doing for 3 or 4 years, and they've decided that our identity is going to be defensive, and those teams will have mid-table mediocrity as their future forever. The teams who are like a bit more explosive and try and do stuff, eventually they will rise to the top. Their players will get better. Everybody will stick around. Oof. Shane Lowry,
that is not a good recovery shot.
From one side of the fairway to the other, pin high, but it's in deep rough on the left-hand side. So it's been a little bit of a start at Abu Dhabi this morning for Shane Lowry. We'll keep an eye on that for you on offtheball.com all day today. Did want to talk about the other part about the league. So we had somebody from Kerry, we had somebody from Monaghan. We didn't have somebody from Dublin at this launch. And we'd nobody from Dublin at the launch of Air Sports coverage this week either. And that's unusual. I think somebody said it's the first time in 27 years that there's been a launch and there hasn't been somebody from the defending champs at the launch.
Why not? Do we know why that it didn't go?
No.
Are they keeping their cards close to their chest? Was it a decision that they're not going to be putting the spotlight on this of all years? In case they do what they do at every single media event, and it is give away Jim Gavin's playbook.
Yeah.
They can't be trusted, those Dublin players, can they?
Who would be the Marcelo Bielsa of... Jim McGuinness is basically the Marcelo Bielsa sending somebody up the tree down in Kerry that time, but like current acting... Is there somebody trying to spy on the Dublin football training sessions?
Yes.
Hovering drones over?
Yes, definitely.
What would you learn? Dublin have loads of good footballers, strength and depth, move the ball quickly, have a basketball formation, have starter plays. The kick-out's important. What would you learn specifically that you'd need to know? Yeah,
it's true. Very little.
That they've got a young cornerback who's very good. Howard's very good. Maybe Connolly's not in the team anymore because he said that Howard was good and that was like secret information that no one's supposed to know.
Well, the reason why Marcelo Bielsa spied on Derby County was to retain the first 11. He knew how they were going to set up. It's just helpful to get the personnel. So that's what you'd learn. Is Cian O'Sullivan playing as a sweeper? Where is Kieran Kilkenny actually playing? Are they going to play a 2-man full forward line, a 3-man full forward line? What's going to happen here? So you definitely get those facts from watching a training session, but I think it's pretty clear how Dublin set up at this point in terms of tactics.
Why do you think they didn't put somebody forward for the launch?
I don't know. Honestly, I really do. They've got nothing to be afraid of. They've never once got bitten by a media event, on behalf of a player. sending a player forward has never bitten Dublin in the ass. Like this current Dublin team, obviously. I'm struggling to think of one. Can you think of the event where a Dublin player has actually said something that
is a hostage to fortune?
Yeah, like in terms of football, is remarkably interesting. Obviously, as individuals, when you get talking to them about themselves and their own careers and stuff they do outside of football, they are a remarkably interesting team. But when you get into the nuts and bolts of how did you win this game, or what's your plan for this game, they are very well guarded, and that is totally understandable. You're not going to give away anything that's not necessarily that you shouldn't be giving away. So they're the best county in the country at not giving stuff away, and they seem to not want to go to an event.
Interesting comment piece on this from Mark Gallagher in the Mail this morning. He's got a few good lines about John Horan, the president of the GAA. In his speech to launch the league, Horan did reference the struggle Gaelic Games has to make their presence felt in a crowded media marketplace. I'd like to thank the media. I think you play a crucial part in it all. Nothing irritates me more than to pick up the papers and see all the stuff coming in from overseas in terms of other sports. Or if you go on the internet and all the stories are there, but we don't get in. And then Mark Gallagher makes the point that John Horan wouldn't speak to the media yesterday.
Oh my God!
Apparently, he didn't want to be seen to be intervening in the vote on the new rules on Saturday. Even though Mark Gallagher points out that it's actually the GAA president's job to, you get elected on the basis of steering policy through. So, you know, he could come out and say something today which would help steer that vote at the weekend. But he declined to do that. Apparently, he might be available next week. To talk about it. They did say, look, we just want to talk to you about the league, and he declined that opportunity. So he, in his term of office, Horan has done little to increase GAA's presence in the sports pages, says Mark Gallagher. His dealings with the media have been limited. He spoke to the press last September at the launch of the ESRI GPA report on demands on county players, back in July when the All-Ireland Championships were launched on the Aran Islands, but that briefing only came about after pressure from journalists who had travelled across to Inishmore. So no Dublin representative, and the president of the GAA not speaking to the media yesterday either, which is interesting. I mean, I'd say if you're Allianz, you're a bit pissed off about this. It's like, get out there and talk, lads. I want someone from Dublin up there. Maybe AIG are the sponsors of the Dublin footballers and Allianz are a rival.
No, they've cleared that up.
Have they?
They've cleared that up. It's not a sponsor call from Dublin. That's where did I read that this morning? That's definitely on the records.
What's on the record?
That it was not a call from Dublin sponsors.
No, but Dublin could do it as a favour to their sponsors. That works two ways. Honestly, that works two ways.
Yeah, maybe.
So I don't have to ring up. I don't have to ring up if I'm the sponsor and say, here, don't go to that. But if I sign a deal with a big company that's like worth millions, I know I'm not going to thumb it in their faces.
Yeah.
There's a way that happens that isn't a formal request, because obviously that's not how things work. No one's going to send an email, here, what are you doing? Don't be going to that launch.
Yeah, it's true. Like, obviously the reaction would be, well...
But they didn't go to the air launch either, and that doesn't make any sense.
That's the thing. The thing here would be like, oh, poor media complaining about the lack of access, etc., etc., etc.
But I don't care.
It makes no odds. It's just complaining about the lack of
We're not
GA
complaining.
coverage. No, I'm not talking about you. Just say, from a GA perspective, if you work for the GA and on the very day that the league champions aren't showing up, that you're complaining about the lack of GA coverage, just seems a tad ill-timed. And maybe he was unaware that there was no Dublin players there, and maybe the timing of that game. I wasn't there. I don't want to completely.
He must have known who was showing up. Of course he should.
Yeah, I'm sure he did.
Well, I think I'm pretty sure these things happen. He gives a speech at the front of the room. The assembled players are beside him, and then the players break up and do their interviews, like we just saw with Stephen. But like, obviously, if the best team in the country send a representative, there's going to be more coverage, because somebody will say something that is like, yeah, we're obviously not talking about the 5 in a row, or we are talking about the 5 in a row, and that just generates talking points, and that leads to coverage, and that's why you get more coverage. But in the meantime, I don't know, the number of GAA stories in the back of the paper.
Like, just to read out, just when you asked me, to be clear, when I said it was on the record, I actually just want to read out the passage that I was reading earlier on, because I found it here. Carlo Kane saying, it is believed the decision was made by the Dublin management, although their reasons are unclear and a request for an interview wasn't returned. However, there is speculation that it is part of a media strategy aimed at keeping the Dublin players under the radar as hype around the 5 in a row builds. What is certain is that Dublin's decision not to send a player to yesterday's Allianz League launch at Croke Park has nothing to do with fellow insurance company AIG being the Dub's main sponsor. AIG's stance on the issue is that they would be happy to see their logo on a Dublin jersey all over media coverage of the launch of a rival company. So I think that clears that one up.
Also fair enough, yeah. All right, so the other thing that was obviously that we needed to talk about was whether or not the Dubs are going to play in Croker for 2 of the Super 8 games, and the notion that that was fair because that wasn't their home ground, and so they have to play their neutral game in Croke Park, and they have to play their Croke Park game, their home game in Croke Park and their neutral game in Croke Park, and it's just their home, Parnell Park is their home ground. What's your problem?
We were under a bit of time pressure there, so we couldn't chat to Darren about it afterwards. I'd like to hear his thoughts, because there was a sort of editorialising of the tone, saying that there was 50,000 people at one of Dublin's Super 8 games, which suggests to me, I could be wrong here, that they need to find now a 50,000 seater stadium, forgetting the fact that, of course, that was a double header in that first game of the Super 8. So I'm not sure what the attendances have to do with what actually happened last summer. Do you need to go and find a ground like the new Casement Park or Páirc Uí Chaoimh to actually house the Dubs?
Páirc Uí Chaoimh, yeah.
What is...
Couldn't the neutral game be played in Páirc Uí Chaoimh?
It definitely could.
So the rule should be Dublin can't play 2 games in the county of Dublin. That should be it.
Yeah.
That's all. Whereas this gymnastics that they're going through, I suspect, means this thing's going to fail, and we're going to have the same situation again this year, and that ruins the integrity of the Super 8.
Because it is ridiculous to say that Dublin are going to play their home game in Páirc Uí Chaoimh. That is just ridiculous, and that is what this move proposes.
Yeah, play the neutral game there.
Sorry, it doesn't propose that they play their home game in Páirc Uí Chaoimh, but they will need to look for a suitably big stadium. Realistically, that's Nolan Park or Portlaoise. Even that, it definitely has to be the
Gaelic grounds. They could play in Thurles. They could play anywhere, right? There's loads of places that they could play. That you're going to get Clonus. I mean, Clonus. Yeah.
Well, as a neutral venue, that's perfectly fine. Monaghan travelled down to Dublin to play in the neutral venue last year. Kerry travelled up to Croke Park to play in a neutral venue last year. Galway travelled over. So you can say to Dublin playing Páirc Uí Chaoimh for their neutral venue. There is absolutely no issue with that.
Yeah.
Just the semantics of saying that it's the home venue. It just seems that they're going about it just the wrong way.
Shane Larry's had 2 bogeys in his first 3 holes, and has just found the meaty part of the green on the par 3 fourth. No chance of a birdie on that. I mean, barring a miracle putt. So shoulders a little bit slumped after a difficult start for Shane Larry this morning at Abu Dhabi. I didn't realise Justin Johnson was playing in this tournament as well. So win this and you get a bucket load of world ranking points.
Yeah, bucket load of world ranking points, bucket load of dollars as well.
Yeah.
But most importantly, it's to start off the season on the right track. He said it was a good Christmas break, wasn't it? That's kind of helping his upturn in form. Just be great to see him back in contention once again. If we can get to Saturday morning with a bit of golf and television with Shane Lowry involved, that'd be a good weekend. So let's move on. Khabib Nurmagomedov's head coach Javier Mendez spoke to Off the Brawl last night. He wants Khabib and McGregor to fight again ASAP. The Nevada investigation into the UFC 229 brawl is due before the end of this month. They like a good quick investigation, don't they? Months and months and months and months and months and months after the fact, they're finally getting round to having an investigation to what happened in the brawl, which took place after the really the massive straightforward victory for Khabib against McGregor. Here is what Javier Mendez had to say last night. Have a listen.
So, okay, this is the thing. Come September 29th, we'll know what's going to happen. And Khabib may very well have one idea, and I may very well have other ideas, which is usually the case. But usually the person that has the best pulse on what Khabib is going to do is his father. It doesn't matter what I say, but what I want is obviously, I look at this as more of a prize fight than I do sport, So I want the biggest prize fight. So the biggest prize fight, hands down, no comparison, is Conor. So obviously I want a rematch because that's what this is, the biggest prize fight, right? And because of what happened on the last time, there's more interest now on the second one, if there's a rematch to be had, because we don't know with Conor. He's so rich now with his Popper 12. I hear is doing fantastic. He's a great image, bro. He appears to be a hell of a businessman. So now's the time to strike while the iron's hot. I say Cowboy Stadium, because that still would do the pay-per-view numbers. It would do everything. I think now's the time to consider doing something like that.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely been buttering up Jerry Jones, the owner of the Dallas Cowboys, with his. He showed up to 2 games, 2 separate games, was it?
Certainly, he showed up to 1.
Definitely 1 on the field. He was in Jerry Jones' box. He was on the field throwing passes to Dak Prescott. Then they all did the celebration the next week when whenever they scored a touchdown. Like Dallas, I mean, I don't know how much money Jerry Jones makes from renting out a stadium. Doesn't seem to care that much about like making extra cash. He seems to be happy to blow his money on whatever. Spent something like 15 million on the party when he got inducted into the Hall of Fame.
If you've got that kind of money, though, it is like that's kind of like you spending 50 quid on your 50th. Like you're going to spend 50 quid on your 50th.
Burn, that was a good one. Yeah, all right.
I don't see any reason why the renting out the stadium is going to be an issue from a Jerry Jones perspective.
Well, they feel it though is the thing. That's it's huge, and it's. I mean, I don't know. Maybe like you bounce these things out of Vegas, and all of a sudden, Dallas and Houston metropolitan areas decide they want to go and see a big fight.
If they pack out Cowboy Stadium for a UFC card, that's a real game changer for Dana White, really, isn't it? It's kind of ratcheted this thing up to another level. Like Texas, obviously quite protective of the idea that it's a big footballing state, and there's no other sport that's going to come close to football in this state. Like basketball is tried, and it will always play second fiddle, as it is in a lot of states. I see they've got an MLS team actually this week. But if the UFC managed to kind of sell out Cowboy Stadium with a strong pay-per-view card beside it, it's a really big rubber stamp for not only what this organisation can do, but further evidence of this insane brand that is Conor McGregor. Now, the thing is, listening to Khabib's camp there is this sort of sense that they desperately want this. Like, it's very rare that you hear the clear victor coming out so soon after a fight and saying, we want to rematch so soon. They clearly just see the bank balance that could be resulting from this, and it is a huge payday from them, and you can't blame them.
But also the lack of peril. There is no peril. He's going to win that fight.
Good point.
Like, I think that's the most... Yeah, we'll take this fight.
Is there any way that McGregor gets himself into a shape where he can beat that guy? It's very hard on the evidence of the last fight. Like, there was... Like, Chris Fields was in the studio before that saying that there is every chance that if McGregor does X, then he can actually win this thing.
But he did also, like, he laid out a path to victory for McGregor, but it was like a bunch of very specific things having to happen almost in sequence.
Yeah, it's true. It was kind of like the idyllic situation time and time again in the little mini battles that happen within the fight.
Yeah.
So, I'm not sure. But the way he's kind of analysed it himself and the way he's been speaking in just those couple of Instagram posts, McGregor, it's kind of like there is a huge amount of regret, I think, in terms of how he approached the fight. Now, the thing is, if he approaches it in a different way or has more success early on, like it was a second round I think he won, wasn't it? If he has more success in that first round, does Khabib then have a different plan B himself? And he probably does, just because he seems to be a far superior fighter.
I don't know. I mean, maybe the other thing if you're Khabib is like, you have the rematch, you lose it in the 5th round, you get a 3rd fight, and the money rolls on, and you keep McGregor relevant for a long period of time.
Not a chance. That guy does not seem like the type of person who would ever want to think about money over his... He thinks about money, but money over his greatness as a fighter. He's definitely the most tuned in terms of his legacy as a great combat sports figure. Like, he wins the second fight as well. Will it be as comprehensive as the first? Maybe not. Maybe they keep it close, and it goes to the comeback.
Yeah, you need like, I don't know. So I think there's only 3 fights that in the world that anybody has any interest in McGregor fight again. One against Nate Diaz as a decider. One against...
Don't say Paulie Malignaggi here.
Yeah.
Get out of here.
I'm telling you.
I thought you were joking when you said that the other day, just for the sake of creating an argument. Like, you could pick 3 fights, and Paulie Malignaggi is in the top 3 people that McGregor could fight to get
that is going to do any business, that people are not just going to go... Because when is he going to fight UFC people that are like... Unless he has like some kind of tune-up fight, but they don't do that. He's not going to have a tune-up fight and risk getting injured, being out for a period of time. Every fight has to be a super fight, right? And is there anybody at that division now that anybody thinks he can beat, that he hasn't come off so far from his peak?
Okay, so do you think there's a chance that McGregor versus Khabib 2 sells out Dallas Cowboy Stadium?
I don't know. No.
What about Malignaggi there? Way less of a chance.
No, but should they stick Malignaggi in New York? Or... Like that's the Madison Square Garden fight.
Yeah, but that's
much smaller.
That's specific to Malignaggi, though. I mean, I'm talking global appeal here. So, and like Texas is almost like a neutral hunting ground here. Probably more. Like, I'm not sure would Malignaggi even do better than Khabib in that scenario. I just think when it comes to the global appeal of a Conor McGregor fight, I don't think the Malignaggi idea has as much power behind it as you think.
I think it'd be pretty easy to generate that kind of stuff because
the press tour would be like even worse than the Maymac press tour.
Well, I don't know if you do as much. Like, I don't know if they're looking for that kind of money. They're not going to get that money. That doesn't happen ever again.
Well, I know they're not going to get that type of money.
It's a single shot. So this is we'll only make 20 million each from this fight. That's okay.
Keep selling whiskey is what I say.
Yeah, maybe. All right, off the ball, we'll preview the Dublin Racing Festival from the Sugar Club on Thursday, the 24th of January. It's just a week away. So this night next week, if you want to be there, we're going to have an all-star lineup from the world of racing and beyond, including Niall Quinn and Nicky English, Davy Russell and Rachel Blackmore. Patrick Mullins are going to be alongside Kevin Kilban, Johnny Ward and John Duggan. It will be a festival of racing to preview the Dublin Racing Festival. We're really looking forward to this. It's going to be a massive racing weekend. It takes place at the Leopardstown Racecourse on the 2nd and 3rd of February. So plenty of time to come along to this. Have your card marked in advance and then head along to the racing on the 2nd and 3rd of February. For all the details about the Dublin Racing Festival at Leopardstown Racecourse, get your tickets for the festival now at leopardstown.com. There's one other thing that we just wanted to talk about, which we missed a little bit earlier on, was Donncha Boyle's piece today about Diarmuid Connolly making the point that football needs its mavericks. That there's a picture of Jamie Clark to illustrate the piece. The whole point is that football has become a little bit boring, a little bit mundane, that the primacy of the system over the individual has resulted in less individual talent coming to the fore than was previously the case. Now, you can definitely make that case. You can definitely make that argument. You can also make the argument that within the systems we're starting to see super athletes emerge and get on the ball a lot more and influence games a lot more. I'm thinking a little bit maybe of some of those young Donegal footballers who will probably become household names, I hope, in the next couple of years. But anyway, he's making the point we need Connolly. Football and life is boring without the Connollys of the world, without the Jamie Clarks of the world.
He makes things a lot more exciting, Diarmuid Connolly. And I'm, on the Jamie Clark point, delighted to see him back in these shores. We see Kieran MacDonald on screen as well. Would Kieran MacDonald thrive in the current situation with Gaelic football? I don't think he'd be as effective as he used to be. I think, for example, Gooch was very lucky to get out when he did.
I don't know. I think that, like, those guys, if you have talent like that and you can get them to do stuff, like, I think Kieran MacDonald would be an amazing centre forward, picking the ball up, spraying it about, breaking defences, and then also scoring. Like, there's definitely a role for that. Or you stick him in corner forward and he wanders around and takes defenders with him. He gets man marked, but, like, welcome to the ball game.
Yeah, I think centre forward is probably the kind of that's the bullseye in terms of a position for that player at the moment. The only kind of flip side is who's doing the tracking back, who's bringing the physicality to the number 6 in that situation, or whoever is marking you. Like, I don't know, like we've seen Conor McManus, for example, thrive in an extremely tough provincial championship, extremely tough Alliance League year after year, and he was absolutely outstanding last year. Would he be more outstanding in a different era? I do wonder, like, how brilliant is Conor McManus' talents? I do wonder if it's kind of been hampered a little bit by the environment that he's playing in. And like Donncha Boyle is bang on. Like these are the things that kind of bring life to the championship. It is those little moments, particularly offensively, that we'll remember. We don't necessarily remember a great systemic success unless it's at the very top scale, like Donegal against Dublin in 2014, for example, or Donegal winning the All Ireland in 2012. So, like, I think from a neutral perspective, we'd all be happy to see Diarmuid Connolly back, wouldn't we? Like,
yeah.
I don't see the downside from a neutral perspective to not having Diarmuid Connolly involved.
No, there's none. The one thing was that we were talking about earlier on about the 5 in a row and whether or not the neutral wants the 5 in a row to happen.
Oh, yeah. You're of the opinion that we all want to see it happen. We absolutely do not want to see the 5 in a row happen. We want to see this Dublin team beaten. I think most neutrals do.
I don't know if they do.
Look, why?
Because you want to see greatness. You want to bear witness to the greatest team of all time. But they haven't been they're not the greatest team of all time.
Thank you very much.
Demonstrably, yes. Like, they may well be, but at the moment they're not. They will be. And they're probably going to be like a 7 in a row team that no one touches until the next Dublin team does 7 in a row or 10 in a row. Like, we're in that scenario at the moment.
People want to see the greatest taken down. We want to see the fall from grace. Like that's why celebrity scandals sell so many newspapers, is you want to see spectacular falls from grace. Now, I don't want to see this Dublin team fall from grace. I just want to see them lose one football match in late summer. I want to see a different All-Ireland champion than Dublin. We always want to see the best team taken down.
You don't want to see Mayo win You don't want to see Cork win.
If you gave me a choice,
you want to see Tyrone win.
Well, obviously, I don't want to see any of those teams win. If you gave me a choice between Dublin and Mayo, true gritted teeth, I would rather see Mayo win in All Ireland. I can't, that's how much I don't want to see the 5 in a row happen. But that's also because Kerry couldn't do the 5 in a row, and I would be extremely jealous of Dublin if they did it.
Wait until you get your exposure to the Mayo fans on the terraces in Killarney, and you can renew hostilities with them from your running pitched battles last year.
Yeah, a couple of knuckle dusters.
Bielsa came out fighting if only Keenan O'Neill had put in half the work preparation. Maybe the Irish team wouldn't have looked so shambolic in the last 2 years. Bielsa perfect for Ireland. Hashtag OTB AM, says Bernard. Mad says odds are Sexton and Carberry the only two that will play in the main games. I'd say Carty is coming in to get experience with the Irish squad. He'll probably be 4th choice for Japan. He needs to be ready to step up if required in Japan. As it is, we only have 3 fit and trained in out halves. Getting Carty up to speed is important. Hashtag OTBM. Yeah, exactly. I think that's exactly the point that everybody's making, is that I see Ross Byrne dumped as the headline on one of the back pages. I don't think that's what's happened here. I'd say they gave him a phone call and said, go and play, get game time. You'll be about the squad later on in the competition, and stay ready. Dara says Carty has been immense and playing with serious form. Joe didn't pick him for an upset or morale. Carty is good enough to be capped, no doubt. That's the whole point as well, and it's the same point about Tom Farrell as well. And Mark Redmond says start Carberry. Hashtag OTBAM. There you go.
We should get
Hi Mafia speaking this morning. He's right though. Start him.
We should get Start Carberry billboards put up around Dublin, much like the Save Ferris billboards in Ferris Bueller's Day Off. This should be the national movement. Start Carberry.
3 billboards in a row.
Yeah,
just outside, wherever.
And Mayo GA already did that.
What were their 3?
Remember, it was Galway who did it actually outside Manola last year, and 50 whatever it was since 1951, however many years, 67 years without an All Ireland. 1 more year to go up Galway or something like that. Do you not remember that?
No, I missed it.
That was the day of the game in Castlebar last year. I've definitely got all those words wrong, but there was definitely 3 billboards erected outside Manola before Galway Mayo last year.
And it worked as well. All right, that's your lot for this morning. We'll be back on tomorrow morning. Mark Kennedy and Liam Lawrence are joining Keith Andrews, and Joe is in studio alongside Keith in the Keith Andrews show today, so that's going to be pretty interesting. Then tonight, John Giles, Jim McGuinness and the football show on Thursday nights off the ball. We're back tomorrow at 7:45 a.m. You're not doing the back 3 tomorrow. It's next Friday before the start of the Six Nations. So going to get Tommy Bowe to select his back 3 for us. And we'll do the centres in the middle of the week next week as well. So our depth chart will be completed in plenty of time for kickoff ahead of the Six Nations. We'll see you tomorrow. Good luck.